Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Oh Lord. I'm ready. I'm never ready for these videos, but I'm ready. Do a subscribe, preemptive like, Rice degree. Why everyone hates American tourists? Well, I have a few ideas.
Temple. You're standing in a Kyoto temple. The air smells like incense and centuries of accumulated calm. Then someone yells, "Honey, look, is that Buddha?" The volume alone could wake ancestors 6 generations deep. The monk's eye twitches. Every pigeon within a 50-meter radius takes off. That's the American tourist in Asia. Stay tuned. By the end of this video, you'll see why American confidence feels like cultural terrorism in much of Asia. You'll find out why Europe views American tourists differently and learn about the digital nomad lifestyle as well. Americans know they're universally hated as tourists. 73% believe they have a bad reputation abroad. 53% think they're seen as arrogant. Turns out, only 27% of Europeans actually agree. So Americans are over here having an anxiety attack about their reputation, while Europeans are like, yeah, they're loud, but they tip well, and they're friendly, it's fine. A 2025 survey showed that 73% of Europeans have neutral or positive views of American tourists.
Video over. That's it. Thanks for joining me, guys.
64% even describe them as friendly. Sure, they're loud. Sure, they expect everyone to speak English.
Please, Obama, listen to me.
But there's familiarity there, cultural overlap, shared history that doesn't involve occupation and colonization. In Europe, Americans are that annoying cousin who shows up uninvited but at least brings wine. What about Asia?
First of all, this is just such a funny image to me. I just like, oh, what did I do? But
annoying cousin who shows up uninvited but at least brings wine.
Is that true?
What about Asia? That's a completely different story. In Asia, they're uninvited guests who don't know the house rules, track mud every different story. In Asia,
I don't even know if she's American. She probably is.
They're uninvited.
But how do you lack so much awareness? I try to attribute it to a lack of self-awareness than just, I don't care. I'm here. I spent money. I can do whatever I want. I don't like either, but I hope it's lack of awareness. Not that that's a good thing. But what you're not, this isn't Disneyland, okay? It's like, oh, look at, honey, look at Donald Duck. Go take a picture. It's like, this is a person walking around. Lady, what are you doing?
Guests who don't know the house rules, track mud everywhere, and then complain the bathroom's weird because the toilet has a bidet function. This difference isn't really about manners, but about power. To understand how we got here, we should look at what happened when America accidentally created the tourist middle class. More on that in a second. But first, why does volume matter so much? Back to that temple, and that American yelling about Buddha. He wasn't trying to be disrespectful, which somehow makes it worse. In the USA, volume equals confidence and friendliness. Quiet people get told to speak up, like it's a personality flaw that needs immediate correction by a life coach. In Asia, that same volume feels like you're calling on spirits who ask not to be disturbed in their eternal rest. 70% of Europeans think American tourists are loud. This is interesting because in Europe, people often raise their voices in public without feeling guilty. In Japan, high context communication depends on subtle, nonverbal cues and quiet voices.
I can't speak English. Oh my god.
So American conversational volume really stands out. The worst comes up after a couple of drinks, because Americans abroad treat alcohol like it's a cultural experience instead of what it actually is. After Americans get their drinks, they're loud and drunk, which is loud but with way worse decision making. Hostels across.
Okay, I don't see that as I don't see Americans being loud and talkative as friendly as an excuse to act that way in another country. Just because you're used to it in another country doesn't mean that you shouldn't know that's different when you're going to another country. Is it that difficult? Not even to research. I'm not saying you have to research like how before you go, like how are my normal things in America socially different than another place? But just read the room. read the room, you know? So I don't see that as an excuse. Like, oh, we're used to this. We think this is friendly. Sorry, not sorry. It's like, read the room, all right? Act. It's like this. Don't act as you would in your own home. Don't act in your friend's home or someone who's having you as a guest's home like you would in your own home. The same would apply to another country, if not more so. So that's not an excuse for me.
Southeast Asia have drunk, which is loud but with way worse decision making. Hostels across Southeast Asia have entire wings that smell like regret and cheap beer. Night markets in Bangkok have learned to stock extra ice because Western tourists treat Singha like water. Europeans and especially Brits might technically hold the crown for most obnoxious drunk tourists, but Americans are strong contenders. However, it's not just volume that separates America from Asia in terms of culture. The internet gave Americans what I call visual literacy without comprehension. They've watched K-dramas, they've seen travel vlogs, they've memorized gestures from TikTok. They can mimic the movements but have zero idea what they mean. Imagine someone learned surgery from Grey's Anatomy and then shows up to the operating room like, I got this. I've seen all 15 seasons. So when an American claps enthusiastically before praying at a shrine because they saw someone do it in an anime once, or tries to high-five a Korean elder because we're all friends here, right? It reads as performance art titled, I learned your culture from the internet and that should be enough. Then there's tipping. In America, it's essential. Service workers rely on it because minimum wage is a joke told by those who've never worked in service jobs. In Japan, tipping goes against omotenashi. This is the idea of wholehearted hospitality, which should be perfect without needing money to prove it. When Americans leave money on the table, they're not being rude. They're just telling someone their entire cultural philosophy of service needs a $20 performance bonus. But did you know you can tip on YouTube as well? Just subscribe, then press like, and comment on what tourist you think is most annoying. Another misconception is about food. Americans grow up believing customization is a constitutional right. No onions, extra sauce, make it vegan, but still taste like meat. Can you do half portions? Those requests are normal in America. In much of Asia, food is philosophy. You don't customize it any more than you'd edit poetry. You receive it, you respect it, and if you don't like it, that's a you problem that therapy should probably address. But none of this is really arrogance.
I'm acting like a parrot here, but
no onions.
Look, it's the title of the video. I know he I'm not saying that he's trying to make excuses for Americans. Of course he's not. But this is my problem. Okay? This is my main problem that can go across all of these types of videos I watch about Americans or tourists annoying people in other countries. You are going to a different place. You understand? That place is going to be different. It's a different place. And so, why do you go? You're a guest. Act like a guest. If you're going to a new person's house that invited you, that you've never been in their house before, you wouldn't just act like you would in your house, like, aha, put your feet up. It's like, wait, I can't put my feet on your table? I do that at my house. That's not an excuse. So when you go to another country, like, oh, we're used to this over here, that would just piss me off even more. Because I don't care what's normal in your country. You're in a different country. You're not in your house. You're in my house. Act, why do I even have to say this? Act as if what you can do can be misinterpreted differently than how you would do it in your country. Is that crazy? Am I going crazy? Is that crazy?
Extra sauce, make it vegan, but still taste like meat. Can you do half portions? Those requests are normal in America. In much of Asia, food is philosophy. You don't customize it any more than you'd edit poetry. You receive it, you respect it, and if you don't like it, that's a you problem that therapy should probably address. But none of this is really arrogance. Americans train for this behavior their whole lives, often without realizing it. Let me show you how geography created this problem. America is massive, 3,000 miles coast to coast. You can explore every climate, from desert to rainforest. You'll see mountains, beaches, plains, and cities. You can experience 50 cultures without needing to learn a new language. Never need a passport. Never forget that the world works differently, just 10 feet beyond your borders. For most Americans, foreign is 12 hours on a plane and half a paycheck in tickets. That distance breeds comfort in isolation. When you grow up with English everywhere, on signs, menus, and in chats, you start to believe the world can't be different. Other countries learn your language, watch your movies, use your currency as the global standard. When you're at the center of the map, curiosity feels more optional than essential. Education doesn't help. Just 20% of American K-12 students learn a foreign language. Most stop after 2 years of Spanish in high school, which they rarely use later. The
I took 6 years of Spanish and I'm still horrible.
result, only 10% of Americans speak a foreign language proficiently. Compare that to 65% of Europeans. The entire American system
And I'm sure like 9.9 of that 10% is people who came from a place that spoke Spanish, you know, so they already knew the second language and they learned English.
operates on the assumption that English is enough, and historically it has been enough. That's what makes it dangerous. And that unintentional ignorance, rooted not in malice, but in never needing to look
What?
beyond your borders, is what makes American tourists so jarring in places where cultural literacy isn't optional. But this whole situation was actually invented 70 years ago by accident. After World War II, America was rich because its factories were still standing. As Europe rebuilt and Asia recovered from war, the United States kept on producing. By the 1950s, many Americans owned a car, a house with a white picket fence, and enjoyed 2 weeks of paid vacation.
Golden
This was
retriever.
revolutionary, especially since most people in history worked until they died with no days off. This created something brand new, the regular person tourist, not aristocrats doing grand tours through Europe's cultural capitals, nor merchants traveling for business, just Dave from Ohio with a camera, confidence, and absolutely no preparation for the world outside his comfort zone. From 1950 to 2007, global tourist arrivals soared from 25 million to 898 million, a 3,552% increase. Americans arrived in rebuilt Japan during the 1950s with wide eyes and zero cultural literacy. They had watched movies featuring temples where everything was subtitled. In those films, everyone spoke English eventually. Standing in an actual shrine surrounded by etiquette they couldn't decode, they did what Americans do when confused. They improvised loudly. And here's where Asia's relationship with this gets complicated, in ways Europe doesn't experience. For decades, America didn't just export tourists. It exported the definition of modernity itself. American movies, American music, American language, American everything. Many Asians grew up with it. They admired it and wanted it. They also measured their country's progress against the American standard. So when an American arrives clumsy and unaware, it stings differently. They remind us how much of our world still revolves around theirs. That's why some Asians hate American tourists, but it also needs them desperately. Let me show you the numbers. In 2024, over 53 million Americans traveled overseas, spending approximately $169 billion internationally. A huge portion landed in Asia, in hotels, street markets, temples with donation boxes conveniently labeled in English for maximum guilt-tripping efficiency. That tourist
Still laughing at that, or I'm thinking, laughing internally at that. It's like the cousin that you don't really like, but they bring a bottle of wine. I guess that's true, and hilariously, depressingly so.
disrupting prayers at the Kyoto temple, his donation probably funded the restoration. This makes Asia's relationship with American tourists complex. It means we need their money but wish we didn't. But wait, there's a new generation of American tourists now. They should be better, right? This paradox isn't unique to Americans. Every empire's tourists eventually become the world's least favorite guests. In the 1800s, British grand tourists were quite unbearable. Young aristocrats wandered through Europe, expecting respect and treating locals like mere background decoration. And Chinese and Indian tourists are starting to show the same behavior. New money always travels loudly until it becomes old money and learns to whisper. Tourism Tourism shows who can afford to leave and who has to stay. Every souvenir sold, every selfie snapped, and every costly hotel room booked reminds us of global inequality. The waiter smiles when he takes your order. He's thinking about his rent. You're thinking about Instagram. For Asia, that smile carries history. The same West that once dictated what counted as progress still defines what luxury looks like. Tourists looking for authentic experiences are why authenticity was packaged and sold. Despite everything, tourists keep coming. Asia is beautiful, affordable, incredibly photogenic. For Americans, travel here feels like escape from capitalism, from chaos, from themselves and their country's problems. They come searching for peace and clarity. The irony is that they bring the noise with them. They come not as explorers claiming new land, but as fans who have studied the material for years. This new American tourist grows up on screens and algorithms instead of postcards. They don't yell for directions. They're quieter, more anxious, and sometimes painfully self-aware.
I've seen videos of American tourists who go to places like Japan and are kind of disappointed because I guess they had some image of Japan that they learned from anime or something, and just they don't even think that this is a different place, that a lot of it, what you consume in terms of Japanese media, is not going to be exactly what it's like in Japan. And I'm glad that people are learning that, but I don't know why you couldn't have that expectation before you go. And the point about America being huge, 3,000 miles coast to coast, and you can travel thousands of miles and still being in the same country. When he said experience different cultures, I kind of argue against that, because I feel like you'd have a different cultural experience if you traveled from Germany to Poland than you would traveling from Massachusetts to California. One is 3,000 miles away, the other is one trip across a border, and you're going to have way more cultural difference from Germany to Poland than you will from Massachusetts to California. So I don't even think you're going to be able to experience a lot of cultures within America. But having the idea that, oh, I can travel so far within America and I'm fine with how I act. That means I can travel equally as far, but to Europe, that means I can act. That's unacceptable to me. So I'm beating a dead horse.
Already know to remove shoes indoors. They already know not to tip in Japan. They've learned more cultural do's and don'ts than actual phrases in the local language.
I don't even think it's about knowing that, okay? It's a plus, but I think you could be completely ignorant of how another country works and not know the things, but just know you're going to another country, and so don't act the way you would act in your own country.
However, awareness can backfire. This generation fears being rude, but even more to be content. Nobody wants to end up on TikTok in a video titled "American Tourist Embarrasses Entire Country with 3 million views and counting." So they overcorrect constantly. They whisper in restaurants until staff can't hear their order. They bow too deeply until it becomes parody. They treat respect like performance art that requires an audience. Sometimes that hyper-awareness creates more discomfort than the old ignorance ever did. At least the loud tourists were predictable. But this generation doesn't take 2 week vacations. They take 3-month digital nomad experience.
You're about to throw that?
But this generation doesn't take 2-week vacations. They take 3-month digital nomad experiences and 6-month remote work adventures. Europeans have the same type of nomads. They all rent Airbnbs in Bali. They order $3 smoothies and post pretty photos on Instagram. But they also push locals out of their own neighborhoods. After 2021, rental prices in Bali surged, villas reaching $2,014 per month, up from around $1,000. Digital nomads who earn American salaries and live in low-cost areas create what researchers call socio-spatial segregation. That's academic speak for locals can't afford cafes, charging $5 for coffee when minimum daily wage is $10. So, what began as cultural interest turns into subtle colonization, now with better Wi-Fi and smarter branding. They're driving up costs while searching for the perfect lighting for their Instagram stories. Still, they're trying. You can see it in travel vlogs spotlighting local voices, in comment sections explaining why you shouldn't film monks without permission, in small moments moments where curiosity finally learns to shut up and listen. But unfortunately, American tourists won't change. Why would they? The world rearranges itself around their comfort, their language, their money. Hotels print signs in English. Restaurants hire English-speaking staff. Entire economies restructure themselves to accommodate American expectations. The only real question is whether we'll learn anything from them before Indian tourists take over.
So, I said most of what I wanted to say. I'll have one more comment on the end of the video here about, you know, money, unfortunately, does rule a lot. But, like, I've seen instances in say, Spain and Portugal where native Spanish and Portuguese are starting to, like, revolt against the tourism climate. And there can be a point where, yeah, I'm receiving a lot of money, the country's receiving a lot of money, but is that worth diminishing my own enjoyment in my own country? There's got to be a point where it's like, yeah, being less friendly and open to tourism will mean less cash coming from tourists into the economy. But at what point do you just say, all right, that's not worth it? Because how about we take some money from tourism, but also not cripple our own lifestyle, you know? Fascinating video. Always disappointing. I wonder if I'm always kind of repeating myself, but the same things come to mind. So I think it's only an excuse to say, well, I'm so used to how it is over here, and then I don't realize it when I go. Well, you wouldn't do that to a new house you're going to. You wouldn't put your feet up on the table because you put your feet on your table. You wouldn't do that. Nobody, like you, maybe some crazy, insane people would, but have that mindset going in another country. And unfortunately, I don't know if this is true, but I'd imagine that the richer you are, and if you have like rich parents and you're younger, I'm sure it's a perfect storm of annoying American, where it's so easy for you to travel to another country that you don't, it's not as big of a decision where you'd have to calibrate how you act. So I love watching these videos. I do get upset and frustrated, but I do enjoy watching these videos, getting input from other countries. So you guys, a lot of you are going to be from other countries. Would appreciate any comments down below. Love y'all. Hope you're all doing well. See you guys next time. Bye.